What's up, everybody? We finally made it to the finish line. The 2025 Buffalo Bills schedule is about to officially drop. Ryan, I don't know about you, but I've seen a couple of versions of the schedule, and one that seems to be the prevailing thought for the last couple of hours. It feels like the whole schedule is out there. I think it was Trademark Sports that put out the entire schedule on their audio or on all their social media platforms. We're going to react to the schedule, kind of dive into the matchups, where the games fall, and just basically set the stage for this big season right here tonight on Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast.
Yeah, pumped up to talk about this schedule. It'll be officially released here in a matter of about 2 minutes, but it does feel like a weird year where it seemed to be out around 12:30 in the afternoon today, and everything kept lining up every time a game was leaked or reported by a media member, lined right up with this schedule. So this was not one of those fake ones floating around. It looks like we have a pretty good grasp of the Bills' 2025 opponents and when they're playing.
You're way more into the schedule deal than I am. My good buddies, our good buddies, Matthew Beauvais, Sal Capaccio, they are just schedule nerds and like lean into this time of year. For me, I'm more in line with John Scott. I was texting him from Channel 2 today. I'm just like, get me to 8 p.m., get me to 8 p.m. What do you like so much about the anticipation about it all? Because for me, I just want to know what the schedule is. I don't want to like pontificate on schedules that might not end up coming to fruition. Like people do like mock schedules for the Bills. It's turned into a wild situation.
I definitely draw the line at mock schedules, and no offense to anyone that does that. Like I'll do a few mock drafts every year for the draft, but schedules are where I definitely draw the line. For me personally, it's what games can I make? What road games can I go on the road with you for? And how does the schedule work out? What primetime games do the Bills have? Are there any holiday games? Which this year, the answer to that is no. So it's kind of fun breaking it down from that perspective. And then I think for the Bills fans, it's fun throughout the day because you can start planning your trips. If you don't live in Buffalo, maybe it's to make that one trip to the stadium in its final year, and you can kind of get your boots on the ground because of the reports that are out there, and you can kind of go from there.
All right, so the schedule is here, and it is exactly like the one that we have been seeing going around social media throughout today. The Bills open with an absolute blockbuster on Sunday Night Football, a rematch of the divisional round playoff against the Baltimore Ravens. Then it's a home game against the New York Jets in week 2. My wife is very excited about this because she's going to come with me. We're going to bring the kids. I think we're going to go see Hamilton on Broadway.
Not surprised.
Yeah, we've been kind of eyeing that if it was going to fall in that window of time to be able to go see that show. We were going to try to do it. So the Baltimore Jets and then Miami at home as well. So it's 4 home games, Ryan, in the first 5 games, and then the bye week is in week 7. So let's just talk about the first chunk of the schedule here and your reaction to that.
Yeah, first chunk of the schedule. I like that it's the Ravens in week 1. Now, mind you, I don't love the fact that the fan bases are going to be at each other's throats for the next few months because that got ugly come playoff time. That got ugly throughout the regular season with the whole MVP race. But I'm glad that it's week 1 because both teams are going to be a little bit rusty. Both teams are going to come out and not have play their best game at this point. But I think it's a really good chance for the Bills to come out and get a Ravens team before they get hot. And I think Ravens fans and Ravens reporters are going to say the same thing. Hey, we're going to get Buffalo before they really get going. But you look right now and you see the Ravens. They've lost one of their starting safeties already for the season to a workout leading up to the year here. So you just don't know how this is going to play out. Now the Ravens are going to play the Bills with 2 players on the suspension list already. We know that. But I like that. Then you go into these games against the Jets and the Dolphins. And no offense to the Jets. I still think that roster is a few years away from competing. So that seems like a good first road game of the year. Dolphins, the Bills have had their number over the last few years. You get them on Thursday Night Football, a rowdy Bills crowd. And then it kind of softens a little bit with the Saints and the Patriots, followed by even Atlanta. I think Atlanta is a very fun team, a very young team. But this is a great way to start the year before their bye.
All right, so you say it softens, and I agree. New Orleans is going to be competing for the number 1 overall pick. I don't know if I would throw the Patriots into the mix there, because I think that's the toughest game after Baltimore up until the Bills play the Chiefs. I think the Patriots are going to be a real pest and a real problem in this division. Now, a lot of that is dependent on the step that Drake May takes in year 2. If he plays at the level that he played at last year, I think they're going to be good. I think you give him an uptick from Mike Vrabel being now the head coach. And I also think a road game against Atlanta the next week before the bye week is going to be a challenge. That's a 7:15 game. So it looks like that'll be one of 2 games on that Monday night, October 13th. And some breaking news, Ryan. Mr. Talbot's going to be hitting the road to Atlanta. Woo. We're taking Shout on the road. We don't know where yet. So if you live in Atlanta and you're listening to the show right now, get us in touch with some venues there. We're going to put together a live show. We're going to do it big. And the reason why is a couple of reasons. Number one, this is a huge road game. Like if you're looking at like the big city road games this season, Charlotte's big, don't get me wrong, but Atlanta, they don't go there very often. The other piece of it is Atlanta's a huge Buffalo transplant town. So there is a lot of Bills fans based in Atlanta. So we want to try to take the Shout show on the road to Atlanta. We're excited about that one.
We are pumped. My cousin Amy and her husband Rich are already pumped about us coming out for this. They're going to go to wherever we have our show on that Sunday night before the game. Looking forward to covering this one on the road.
So the bye week comes at week 8. Which is very early in the season. I think Sean McDermott's been on record talking about wanting to buy, middle to like starting that last third of the season. So maybe if it came around the Houston game, might be a little bit better. But listen, you don't want it in week 5, right? So I think like the further down that it goes, the better. But it is one of those situations where it is an early buy, and then it's going to be a little bit of a grind. Because if you look at the 4 marquee teams, this was another big picture observation that I had. Baltimore, Cincinnati, Kansas City, and Philly. Those are the big heavyweights on the schedule, right? They're spread out pretty considerably. You got Baltimore at the beginning, KC at the midway point. Then you don't get Cincinnati until down there in December 7th. And then second last game of the season is Philly. So those are spread out quite a bit. But the second half of the schedule starts off with Kansas City, and they're all kind of packed in to that second half. There's no gauntlet this year. Like if you remember those 4 games last year that started with KC, San Francisco, Detroit, and the Rams, there's not one of those kind of runs this season, at least not yet, based on what we know about these teams. So, I mean, at first impression, Ryan, I think this is an absolutely perfect schedule for the Bills on so many different levels. And the other one is no international games, no West Coast trips. The Bills rank 2nd in the NFL in least mileage traveled in the 2025 season based on the schedule. This thing lined up pretty perfectly for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, the only thing that would stop me from calling it perfect is the week 7 bye. I do feel like that's too early for this team. Ideally, you'd be talking late November, early December, the home stretch of the season, get right, get healthy, finish the year with all of your best players ready to go for a postseason run. So that's my one critique here. But you look at this road schedule, the furthest they have to travel is Houston. Are you kidding me? That is unbelievable for the road schedule this season. Because of that schedule, I almost was banking on the Bills playing in an international game. I looked at the mileage and it's like, man, they're not going anywhere. They're not going across the country. Houston's as far as they have to go. This is a sweet schedule for the Bills when you break it down from the travel perspective. You look at some of these teams that they're playing. Carolina, young, some promise, but that's a very, very winnable game. Pittsburgh, I don't know what they're going to do at QB just yet. Cleveland, you like a lot of those games, especially the Cleveland game late in the year. Philadelphia, too, at week 17. I'm on the fence about this one. Part of me likes it because maybe Philadelphia and Buffalo have almost nothing to play for at that point. Maybe their seeds are locked in. And it's not this battle of the Titans where if this was a week 4, week 5 game, nothing would be settled yet. And you'd be getting some pretty heavy punches from both sides. Maybe that works out in Buffalo's favor or vice versa. And then I just also love it from the perspective that the last 2 games of the regular season are both going to be at Highmark Stadium, affectionately known as the Ralph. So fans can, say their goodbyes. Now, mind you, I'm expecting some playoff games there as well, but final season before the new stadium, I love that as well.
Ryan Mackey chiming in the YouTube comments. He mentioned Standard at Roswell and Medlock Tavern, two big Bills backers bars. We're going to be doing our research. We're reaching out to all of them. Who knows? Maybe we'll do it so big. We'll do something in the morning, afternoon at 1, and then we'll do a night one because we'll be getting out there on Saturday, Monday night game, Buffalo kickoff live, kind of somewhere in there on Sunday at 11 a.m. But after that, could be a free-for-all, right? I mean, we do a little bit of a bar crawl, if you will, a little shout crawl. We'll see. Now, also in the comments over on X, great comment from Kevin. Come on, Bills Mafia is going to take over Charlotte, North Carolina. Tons of transplants in NC and South Carolina as well. That is totally true. Ryan's not coming to that one, but maybe we set something up where I get to one of the Bills backers bar. We do a shout on location with you back running the show at the mothership. We'll see how that goes. All right, so we get to the bye week, and then it's two big road games against NFC teams who I think, like, this is definitely not KC San Francisco on the schedule last year,
no.
Right? But it is two road games, and those were both home games, by the way, and it's against two teams that, like, are on the come up, I think. There's a lot with the way that the NFL schedule makers have made this year's schedule. I think that they're banking on Atlanta being pretty good. So if that ends up being the case, if Penix is good and they take a step, they've done a lot of things on that roster. They obviously went defensive line heavy. That's going to be a really tough game right before the bye. And then you come back off the bye, going to Carolina, Bryce Young and company. What are your expectations there with that 2-game stretch? And I already mentioned what I think of that New England game, kind of as the undercard to the big heavyweight brawl against the Chiefs.
Yeah, so first and foremost with Atlanta, you nailed it. They're looking at this team. They're saying, okay, Michael Penix played pretty good ball late in the season. They have that quarterback, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts for any of the truthers still out there. I still think he's a very good tight end, just hasn't panned out to what the expectations were. You saw what they did in this draft class, Matt, doubling down on pass rushers with Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., then addressing the safety position with one of my favorites, Xavier Watts. There is so much talent on that team that the NFL is definitely banking on Buffalo to carry the national audience for that game a little bit, but Atlanta to be a good team this year as well and make that a must-watch game. You talk about New England much improved as well, and then after the bye week, that game against Carolina, Bryce Young's a fun quarterback. He is one of those rare cases where he was benched last year for Andy Dalton, and I thought that it was going to be something that kind of played out longer than what it did. I'm glad it didn't. He came back and he looked great. Usually, a lot of the time, these young quarterbacks don't respond that way when they get benched. He rebounded nicely, so I would really like to see him take that next step, and that could be another fun game. Still think that roster, though, is a little bit away. So those are going to be two fun games wedged between the bye week before you get to another highly promoted game against the Kansas City Chiefs in one of those national game of the week windows.
CBS has a stranglehold on this game. I don't think as long as these two teams play in the regular season, CBS is going to do everything it can to keep that game. And honestly, they've all been classics. So it's like for ratings purposes, that thing, as long as everybody's healthy, knock on wood, you hope that we get to coming off of the Baltimore or the Boston Celtics series with Tatum going down, nothing's worse than like elite players going down in big time games. Like it's just absolutely putrid. Now, before we get too far down the schedule, my wife, the brilliant person that she is, has a great observation here on first look at this schedule. And you might have hit on this earlier, and I was kind of doing some producing behind the scenes. So if I didn't hear it, I'm sorry. Not sure if you reacted to this already, but do you think it's worrisome to have back-to-back division games on a short week at the beginning of the season? Because if you look at the Jets on Sunday, September 14th, on the road, you come back home for a primetime Thursday night game against the Miami Dolphins. My first impression is I'm not as concerned about that because they'll be fresh. They know way ahead of time. It's the Miami Dolphins who don't typically play on the road very well against the Bills. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that could be kind of like a sticky situation if the Bills start out slow? Maybe they lose to Baltimore and somehow have to go on the road to the Jets and get surprised and lose to them. Potentially come home on a short week against the Dolphins, that immediately turns into a must-win game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely worst case scenario there. I still think this Jets team with the uncertainty at quarterback, with a new head coach that I have high thoughts, high praise for. I think that he can right the ship eventually. I'm not too worried about that Jets game, but obviously the turnaround the following week on short rest against Miami, that's worrisome because the Bills have dominated that series with Josh Allen at the helm. Short rest means usually a sloppy game on both sides, lack of game planning. You never know what injuries are going to occur the week before. You never hope for anything serious, but even nagging injuries, it's tough to get back on the field after a Sunday game when you're playing on a Thursday if you got dinged up the week before. So there's always, some concern there. And if you even stretch it back to week one, starting the season with 3 conference games, knowing how important the conference record is, you put it all together. There's reason for worry or concern, but Buffalo's success against Miami, the way this Jets roster is currently built, there's a lot of new pieces. I think getting them in week 2 is a great thing. With Justin Fields and company, having to prepare for Buffalo with a Bills team that, for the most part, obviously a lot of pieces in free agency in the draft, but for the most part, this is a team that is coming back, reloaded with their starters, with just some new depth and talent mixed in.
I like the Jets in week 2 because they're still going to be in that getting to know you phase. Now, I know Fields and Garrett Wilson played together at Ohio State, but I think at this point in their careers, completely different players at completely different times in their career. I think there's a synergy there and an energy there that gives them a chance to be successful early on. And I think defensively, they're going to be good. I think that the Jets defensively are going to look a lot like they did 2 years ago. Aaron Glenn brings kind of that dog mentality that I think he's going to get those guys coached up to it. I think Miami's going to have a free fall. So I think that could be the start of what could be a very ugly season for them, depending on if they even get to the season with Tyreek Hill on the roster or like bought in, how that ends up happening. It seems like they're one blow up away from just complete catastrophe in Miami.
And what's funny is when I saw one of the leaked schedules earlier where they had all the pieces kind of put together for Miami, it looks like Miami has a ton of primetime games this year. If that came to fruition, and I'm with you. I think they're going to have a disappointing season. I think New England has a great chance to bump them for the second best team in the division. Who knows with the Jets, but this could be the free fall of the Dolphins on display in front of a national audience. So much talent, and they've underwhelmed so much in these last few years.
So looking now, back-to-back primetime games. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 primetime games, and then the international game in Madrid in week 11 against the Commanders. So, it's a tough schedule for the Dolphins, and that comes at a really bad time, to your point. I mean, they got some really tough games that differentiate from the Bills. I mean, the Colts are going to be really tough, I think. The Chargers, the Commanders is an absolutely brutal draw. They play the Bucks and the Bengals, so it's going to be a tough go for the Miami Dolphins. All right, I can't believe we've gotten this far without me mentioning the fact that we are brought to you by the National Comedy Center. Located in Jamestown, New York, the National Comedy Center is the perfect day trip or weekend trip for the entire family. One of the most interactive museums in the country. This is a museum experience like no other, featuring comedy's biggest hits and greatest legends. It's a day filled with laughter. The National Comedy Center was named the best new museum in the country by USA Today, one of Time Magazine's world's greatest places, and one of the 25 best family weekend getaways by U.S. News and World Report. Ryan, we cannot wait to get to the Comedy Center. We got to put our heads together and figure out that date. We'll announce that on a later show. But if anybody can make the drive out, we'll make it a shout day at the Comedy Center later this month.
Yeah, pumped to check out all the exhibits, check out the interactive elements of this museum. It is unbelievable. They have these big name celebrities coming in year round. Gabriel Iglesias recently. I've already mentioned some of the shows they have in August. Bill Murray coming in with his band. Jon Stewart. The list goes on. You're getting some heavy hitters there at the museum or the Comedy Center, and we cannot wait to get there ourselves.
We are coming back to Wingnuts this week, Saturday. The Genesee location right by the airport. It is going to be our official OTA's preview show. Come on, hang out. It's going to be relaxed. It's going to be a vibe. We'll talk about the Bills. We'll eat some chicken wings. We'll have some beers, whatever drinks you like. They got them on tap over at Wingnuts. Genesee Street over by the airport, the new location. It's got a beautiful outdoor area. Not sure if it's going to be raining or not, but whatever the case may be, Ryan, inside or outside, it's going to be a great night.
Yeah, we cannot wait. Our monthly show at Wingnuts is going to be an awesome time. Love this new location where they have us kind of stationed if we are inside the restaurant. But come summertime, that outdoor venue is going to be awesome.
So Sunday, November 9th, week 10, after the Kansas City game starts that second leg of the schedule. And it's a trip to Miami, which I think is absolutely great for the Bills to get that game in November. We remember what happened a couple seasons ago when they opened up there. I think it was in week 2 or week 3, and it was just absolutely blazing hot. It's a 1:00 start. It's going to be warm still, but on November 9th, it gives them a much better chance to have manageable conditions on the road against the Dolphins there in week 10.
Yeah, the heat in November is a lot different than the heat in September when you're talking about Miami. It will still be very warm. I'm sure there will still be some sort of advantage for Miami, but it won't be as drastic as we saw a few years ago where they had the thermostats on each side. And I think on Buffalo's sideline, it was about 120 or something like that with the way the sun shines in on the guests that in that stadium. Definitely better to have this in November. Would have been ideal to have December or maybe that early January game, but November's not so bad.
Just typing out a couple replies to our insiders. I sent the schedule out to them close to the top of the hour, getting some reaction from everybody in the chat. The preseason schedule, Ryan, is out as well. The Bills go on the road twice in the preseason. That's going to be pretty interesting. So people asking about Kids Day, that'll be the first preseason game because they're going on the road for the rest of them. It's the Giants at home, so with the return of Brian Dable, and then it's at Chicago, at Tampa Bay, week 3. So that's interesting. That's a game against a team that they play in the regular season. They're going to go out and play them in a preseason game. That'll be interesting.
So I'm guessing in that game you're going to see nothing but backups. Or maybe one series from the starters. You're not going to see much in the preseason anyways in terms of the actual plays. It's pretty vanilla, but that is bizarre to have them in the preseason, then also have them in the regular season. Maybe I make both of those road trips as well. That sounds like knocking 2 more stadiums off the list.
Let's just get after it in a big way. Preseason mania, the official shout tour. Okay, next up, we take a look at the preseason. Then it's up to Tampa Bay with a home game, and then there's 2 pairs of road trips at Houston and at Pittsburgh, then home against Cincinnati, and then it's at New England and at Cleveland before the Bills wrap things up at home against Philly and the Jets. And listen, depending on how this thing goes, Ryan, the Bills can somehow manage the 1 seed. Just think about this. They play at Cleveland on December 21st. They might not have to play another road game. They could play all the rest of their games, for Bills fans, hopefully, all the way to the Super Bowl at Highmark Stadium. I can't think of a better way to send that stadium out than with that kind of playoff run. And listen, I think that this schedule, we don't know everything yet, right? Like, we'll see how the Bills get through preseason. Health-wise, they lost Matt Milano last year before the start of the season. Somebody big goes down, changes the math a little bit. But I really like the schedule. I like how it kind of puts a bunch of different big-time games at different quadrants in the schedule, and it sets up for a really good, successful run through 2025.
Yeah, you look at that 4-game stretch after the Miami game, and Pittsburgh, they look like they're going to have a down year, but every time people say that, Mike Tomlin finds a way to get them to at least slightly over 500, so they're always tough. Tampa Bay was fun to watch last year with Baker Mayfield in that offense. So, that's going to be a tough game. Houston, the talent's there. The offensive line, we'll wait and see. I could see Buffalo maybe getting a little bit of revenge for their last matchup with Houston, maybe having some more luck on their side in that one. And then Cincinnati, they've been a thorn in the side of the Bills. So if you can kind of beat them there starting that home stretch in December, of those final 5 games of the year before you get to the playoffs, that'd be a big win and a big notch in their belt.
I think at Houston is a really tough game. I think that that's a game that's going to be, or a team, I should say, the Bills struggled with a bit last year. Nico Collins, they went out and they drafted a wide receiver. They traded for Christian Kirk. I mean, they've kind of remade that room a little bit. They've added a little bit more on their offensive line. That's going to be a really tough game. And that kind of sets up a stretch where, if you think about it, if New England is what we think that they'll be, that's 4 of the final 7 that are legit tests for the Bills. And the other 3, depending on where those teams are at, I mean, Cleveland could mess around if one of these young quarterbacks hit. The rest of the roster is not terrible. I mean, they've been competitive with this roster over the last couple of years with deplorable quarterback play. So it's just one of those things where there's a lot of things to like about this schedule, but the games are going to come. The teams are going to be who they're going to be. It's hard to really try to figure out exactly how this thing is going to shake out, because there's so many unknowns about a couple of these teams on the schedule. If a couple of them really do take that jump in 2025, it turns into a much tougher schedule.
Well, that's the unpredictability of this. You know, I've seen all the graphics leading up to the schedule release night, and according to last year's teams, I think the Bills have the 5th easiest schedule according to how it all lays out. That sounds all well and good, but you don't know what teams are going to make that jump, which teams are going to fall off. That maybe it ends up being a very easy or favorable schedule for Buffalo, but this could also end up being a very tough slate of games if Houston figures out their O-line, if Pittsburgh figures out something at quarterback. Maybe it is Aaron Rodgers, although I don't think that that's going to happen. Maybe Cleveland, like you pointed out with the quarterback play. You just never know in this league. Teams take us by surprise every single year. The Commanders last year are a great example, with Jaden Daniels and the way that they made a run all the way to the NFC Championship. There's always a few teams like that, and maybe they're on Buffalo's schedule, maybe they're not.
So I'm looking at the Patriots quickly, and I don't know if the league is as bought in on them as a lot of other pundits are. I only see 3 primetime games: the Bills, the Giants, and there's a game against the Jets. I'm not sure if one of those is a Thursday night game. So, you know, it's kind of walk before you run. Like, I think the league wants to see what Drake May looks like in year 2. They've been fooled in the past. Like, I even thought last season, for as good as he still was overall, there was some significant step back for CJ Stroud. A big part of that was the offensive line in front of him.
Sure.
But I think, like, you know, Drake May has a lot of pieces around him, depending on when Stephon Diggs is able to play. Even without that, I think that they've made some commitments there. If you had to put a prediction out there right now on the Patriots for just like how many games you think they'd win, where are you feeling at? What's your starting point?
If I'm going high, I guess I'd go 9, 10. I think 9, though, is a good prediction for them this year. I think they are going to take that a sizable jump. I liked everything I saw from Drake May. I liked their draft quite a bit. I feel like there's talent on both sides of the ball. The Dolphins falling off a little bit, the Jets being a little bit of an unknown. I think that makes some winnable games in the division for them. And then you look at their schedule as well. There's going to be some wins to be had as long as they take that next step. And like you said, never guarantee. The way that Houston kind of took a little bit of a step back with Stroud's play, that could happen to Drake May. You just never know. But I do like New England. I am a believer in this team. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, though.
Kayshon Boutte, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Kyle Williams, the rookie, DeMario, Pop Douglas, Mac Hollins, Stephon Diggs, tight ends at Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, Ramondre Stevenson, and Trayvon Henderson and Antonio Gibson. That skill group right there, that might be the best collective skill group in the AFC East, except for the Bills, obviously. I still think, even with the question marks there, I'd take the Bills group over that. But that's nothing to shake a stick at. That's a decent collection of players for Drake May, a young player. They go out and they have 3 new potential offensive line starters in Will Campbell, the top round pick there out of LSU, Garrett Bradbury, formerly of Minnesota. And they brought over Morgan Moses from the Jets. Mike Onwenu, he's one of the lone bright spots on that team the last couple of years. That offensive line, outside of the Bills, could be the best offensive line in the AFC East.
And that's one of the biggest reasons I like them. They invested in their O-line. They know the importance of protecting their quarterback. That is one of the biggest reasons why Buffalo has been winning these past few seasons and why Josh Allen's been able to be this MVP caliber player in previous years when he didn't win the award, and then obviously the MVP after last season. You build up your trenches, you protect your QB. It makes it more digestible if you don't have a star-studded, wide receiver room. Stephon Diggs, who knows what he's going to look like coming off of this injury, when he's going to be ready to play. But that's still a decent receiver. Mac Hollins, Bills fans are very familiar with. They have a few second-year wide receivers. I like the tight end room. Love the running back that they added in the draft into the mix there. So there's a ton of talent there for Drake May and that offense to kind of take that next step. And the defense, too, with everything going on there with Mike Vrabel, I like that roster a lot.
So I want to give a shout out to our insiders. Maybe read a couple of these reactions. Brian Johnston, one of our insiders, second half after bye looks to be a tough stretch. I think that's good, though. The 2 suspended players will be back for the final run, and that's something to consider as well. I mean, you're going to get a real jolt out of the bye week with the returns of Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi. I'm not sure if, they play a ton in that Atlanta game. They're going to probably be getting ramped back up. But once you get through the bye, and we talk about Carolina, another game to ramp up for Kansas City, that could be a really big jolt to the defense. If the defense has a strong start, that defensive line looks fierce, to be able to add 2 players like that for the second half of your schedule, I think you get really excited about that.
Yeah, you're pumped because following that bye week, they should be ramped up. They should be ready to go. And I don't think either will not necessarily play significant reps with the way that Sean McDermott rotates his guys, but it allows them to be full parts of that rotation where, you have Russo, you have Bosa, maybe Solomon takes a big step. Maybe Landon Jackson does in those first 6 games where there's the suspension there, but Hoyt's going to come in. He's going to get his opportunities. You talk about the defensive line. You hope that Sanders or Dwayne Carter steps up behind Ed Oliver, but Ogunjobi can come in there as well and get some snaps. The more depth that they have, it'll lead to some tough and active situations throughout the year, I'm sure, but it'll keep guys fresh for the home stretch or for the final stretch of the season. It'll keep them fresh come playoff time. So yes, I think that's one benefit of the bye week. Again, not a huge fan of it being in week 7, but by the time they get that bye week to really get all that extra practice, and those 2 players returning from suspension should be good to go.
You get the mini bye later in the season with that Thursday night game. I think it's a 10-day break there, which I think helps you out. So that's why I guess I'm not as upset about the early bye, just because you're getting a kind of quasi one later in the season. Jay Vandermark, another one of our insiders, goes, for a season ticket holder that lives 4 hours from Highmark Stadium, I really dislike the lack of 1:00 games. Ryan, there's only 2 1:00 games on the schedule for Highmark Stadium. In general, there's a lot of 1:00 starts. Most of them are on the road.
Yeah, that is definitely the downside if you are traveling, especially if you're traveling 4 hours away, because, if you're talking a primetime game, get a hotel room, leave the next morning. If you're talking a 4:25 game, you're not getting home until maybe 2 a.m, depending on how quickly you can get out of that stadium. So that makes a very tough go of it. If you are a Bills fan, for sure. And there are a ton of Bills fans that travel a good distance to come to these home games each week.
I think about some of the really tough road games last year, and the one that really sticks out to me the most was that Rams game. That was at the end of, I can't remember, was the Rams game, it was the Rams, then the Lions, right?
I believe, yeah, they dropped the Rams game, and then they went on that.
They won the yeah, okay. So, you coming out of the bye, you have that big win against San Francisco, then you have to go on the road, West Coast, to play the Rams, who ended up being upstart team, maybe one of the toughest on your schedule all season. And it felt like in that game, over the course of especially for the defense, they ran out of juice. And there's not going to be any of those trips. And oh, by the way, there were, I don't know, what was that, 5 or 6 weeks earlier where they had to go to the West Coast for the Seattle game. So to take those 2 big-time West Coast trips completely off your calendar, you don't have any really big road games outside of Houston, and they went to Houston last year as well. I just think that that's a huge advantage for the Bills to try to stay healthy, to try to stay rested, and try to be able to kind of give their best effort in some of these big time games.
Yeah, the travel or lack thereof is going to be a major talking point this season, especially if the Bills are in the mix for that 1 seed, not having to go overseas, not having to play, multiple holiday games. You look at the Chiefs playing on Thanksgiving, playing on Christmas. I know there's a big gap there, but there's something to be said about that. It's the shorter week games with them falling where they do throughout the week. Dallas, who I don't expect to be a playoff team, Lions as well on both of those holidays. So that can be tough. Then you talk about the miles that you travel, these international games that some of these teams have to play. The Bills really lucked out from that perspective.
Brent Bloom sends in one of our insiders as well. By the way, if you want to become an insider, you could text Ryan or I anytime that you want. 716-528-6727. It's a 2-week free trial, and then it's just $3.99 a month after that. Early home schedule. 4 of the first 5 are at home, Brent says. Light travel, like the mini bye at Thanksgiving. 3, interesting, 6 games, then bye week, which coincides with the return of Hoyt and Ogunjobi. So a lot of the observations that we've had. And listen, I think at the end of the day, we could sit here and talk about how this lines up and how the schedule goes. More so than the importance of who they're playing, the Bills have to stay healthy. That's the number one most important thing, to be able to take a run at that 1 seed. And they're going to have to win some of these critical conference games. I mean, if you think about this, Cincinnati's likely going to be back. I don't anticipate them going 500 again. You have Houston that could be in the mix. They were last year, were really ravaged with injuries. Then you have Baltimore and Kansas City. Those are 4 bona fide powers in the AFC. Maybe you don't put Houston in that department, but they have the potential to be that. Those, to me, it's almost like they have 2 division schedules, Ryan, right? They have the AFC East games, the 6 that they play there, and then the 4 AFC games. They got to go as close to 1,000 in those games if they want to take a run at the number 1 seed. We saw what Kansas City did a year ago.
Yeah, what they did record-wise, but just how much conference record means in a typical year too. So the Bills have to be on their A game when it comes to these AFC matchups. One thing I did notice, it's the second straight year that the Bills play the bulk of their primetime games too, like very early in the season. 4 of their 5 primetime games come before the bye week. That's with an early bye week. That's a little bizarre when you think about it. So second straight year, a lot of primetime games early on for Buffalo. I don't know if that's an advantage or not, getting them out of the way early. I don't know how players feel about that. Maybe that's a good question for them this summer in terms of, is it, getting up for these late night games? Does it throw you off your schedule after having a bunch of 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock games or not? But at least they're going to get the bulk of the majority of those over early this year.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I think if you get them over early, you can almost get yourself in the mindset like, okay, let's get through this early grind, and then we can really settle into a schedule. Right. And you really do that on the backside of the bye. So that'll be interesting to talk about. I want to take a second really quick. I always talk on this show about my Uncle Tony. He is awesome. I've had my dad on the Shout podcast. One uncle that I've never had on the show, who is actually my most hot takey uncle of all, is my Uncle Steve. It is his birthday today. So I want to shout out to him, say happy birthday. Next time we get up to Elmo's, wings are on me, my guy. And I think my cousin, his son, is coming into town for Memorial Day weekend. So we'll all get together. We'll have a good time. But I want to make sure he comes out and supports so much. Big fan of Shout. I want to make sure that I give him the shout out.
That's awesome. Happy birthday.
Unintended.
Love that.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I said happy birthday to him. Love that. Great to have some Memorial Day plans. I'm heading to the Pittsburgh, same area that we stayed actually for the joint practice and preseason game. My cousin Molly's getting married there. Big time wedding in a mansion of all places. I'm going to feel really out of place there, but that's all right.
I could see you getting tuxed up with a bow tie in a mansion.
I've got a suit. Don't you worry.
Ooh. Speaking of tuxedos, I feel like we should only be in tuxedos when we're talking about this guy, the prestige of Brian Auman. front and center in the middle of the draft, cheesing with Maxwell Hairston Jr. and all the draft picks. What a night for our guy, Brian Aumann. I'll see if I can pull up the picture while we're talking about him. But Pats on Sunday night feels like a potential trap game. We talked about this. I think that's the toughest game in the stretch between Baltimore and Kansas City. Young and up-and-coming team going against a Super Bowl contender. Got to be careful. What are your thoughts on that?
Vrabel usually has his guys coached up as well. I know the last game or two against Tennessee, Buffalo had some success, obviously, but Vrabel's a very good coach. He'll have them ready. We've already talked about the talent on that roster. Definitely a game that the Bills have to have on their radar. They saw firsthand, and yes, the Bills did not play their starters for the most part in that regular season finale, but they saw some of that young talent on display. Was Joe Milton, who's no longer with that team, but they know Drake May's the real deal. May had some good moments against the Bills in the other matchup. So for sure, a team that's on the rise, a team that Buffalo probably has to keep their eye on the most in that division in terms of who could, get on their heels potentially. It would take a pretty magical run, though, for New England, I think, this year to compete in the division. Next year, though, is a whole nother ballgame.
Look at our guy, Brian. Big cheer. He's got the big oversized Bills hat on right behind Hairston. Shout Buffalo Bills insider, longtime shout watcher. I even think he came on the show at one point, or we might have taken a picture together in Dallas. But Brian's awesome. Shout out to him. What a night that must have been.
Looked like a great time. He and his brother had a podcast at one point. We both were on that one as well. So great to see Brian here in the chat.
All right, so we are brought to you, as we mentioned earlier, by the National Comedy Center, Ryan. And, man, the National Comedy Center, they got stuff going on all the time. They celebrate comedy's greatest artists, including George Carlin, Johnny Carson, Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz, Carl Reiner, Richard Pryor, Joan Rivers, Don Rickles. I could go on and on. Groundbreaking series like Laugh In Living Color, Saturday Night Live, and more. It's a great experience for the entire family with so much for kids, teens, and young adults. You can put yourself into classic TV and movie scenes, create your own memes and cartoon characters, and then perform comedy karaoke and even face off in a laugh battle with family and friends. I'm going to beat you up in a laugh battle when we go out to the Comedy Center.
That's all right. You need a little revenge after the Rock'em Sock'em Robots that we did.
Listen.
I'm just saying.
I'm pretty sure I knocked the head off of your little robot on one of those. And I would say like 50% of our matches, I didn't even know we were like playing at that time.
Oh, come
really
on.
Suspect behavior.
Come on.
I didn't know you were like that sneaky Rock'em Sock'em guy. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, but it'll be a great time there. Throwing ourselves into some classic comedy scenes sounds like a great time too. I'm sure the Bills fans would eat that up.
Saturday night, Wingnuts will be out at the airport location on Genesee Street. Just drive to the airport, put it in. I think Wingnuts, that location is in Google Maps, Apple Maps, all the different navigation systems. And if you can't find it, just go to their Facebook page. I'm going to put a link in the bio or in the description here so that you can go to the event page on Facebook, and that'll give you the address as well. We can't wait, Ryan.
Cannot wait. And any issues with the address, type in Buffalo Airport Hotel. It's attached right to it. That'll also get you to your destination.
Beautiful. We'll see you Saturday. Come on out. Have a good time. Take care, everybody.